but so far I'm not. And this is, I read this book a couple years ago. This is his first book. It's an autobiography, and I just want to read a little bit from it because when I talk about, what is integral consciousness? It's arising on its own. It's more spacious awareness to hold more than one perspective, even dueling perspectives, even perspectives that have been at war for centuries at the same time, and see by holding and being friendly to them what arises in terms of wisdom and compassion and loving intelligence and some way forward where we get to nudge every moment towards that if we can remember to, which we often can't, but we remind ourselves when we practice, and this is all good, But some of these markers for integral are this ability to flow in perspective and to see how other, to take on the skin and bones of other people. And I want to just point this out. This is a little story about when Barack Obama was just living in the south side of Chicago. He was just out of Harvard. He was working in community organizing. And he was living in a, kind of a tenement apartment. And he writes, "One night, well past midnight, a car pulls up in front of my apartment building carrying a troop of teenage boys and a set of stereo speakers so loud that the floor of my apartment begins to shake. I've learned to ignore such disturbances. Where else do they have to go? I say to myself. But on this particular evening, I have someone staying over." I love that. "I know that my neighbors next door have just brought home their newborn child. And so I pull on some shorts and head downstairs for a chat with our nighttime visitors. As I approach the car, the voices stop. The heads within all turn my way. 'Listen, people are trying to sleep around here. Why don't you all take it someplace else?' The 4 boys inside say nothing, don't even move. The wind wipes away my drowsiness. I suddenly feel exposed, standing in a pair of shorts on the sidewalk in the middle of the night. I can't see the faces inside the car. It's too dark to know how old they are, whether they're sober or drunk, good boys or bad. One of them could be Kyle. One of them could be Roy. One of them could be Johnny. These are people in the book. One of them could be me. Standing there, I try to remember the days when I would have been sitting in a car like that, full of inarticulate resentments and desperate to prove my place in the world." And then he talks a little bit about, his world with his grandfather and the struggles he had with his grandfather. But he says, "I start picturing myself through the eyes of these boys." This is, taking the perspectives. "A figure of random authority. And I know the calculations they might be making. That if one of them can't take me out, the 4 of them certainly can." That nodded, howling assertion of self. This is that warrior consciousness. As I try to pierce the darkness and read the shadowed faces inside the car, I'm thinking that while these boys may be weaker or stronger than I was at their age, the only difference that matters is this. The world in which I spent those difficult times is far more forgiving. And then he writes about his childhood and whatever. And their unruly maleness will not be contained as my finally was, by a sense of sadness at an older man's injured pride. And that's where he finally began to, he talks about the feeling of empathy and guilt, and the way he treated his grandfather, and how that really woke him up, was feeling guilt. And of course, guilt is one of the gifts of traditionalism, the gift that keeps on giving. Before traditionalism, people don't feel guilt. In warrior consciousness, shame, and not complicated shame like green shame or postmodern shame, but just the shame of losing face is a big motivator. And that's this lack of empathy. You got to prove yourself. And Red, of course, preys on the weak. So he's doing a great sort of analysis of this. But then he nailed me with this next paragraph, which is where this guy is coming from an integral view. He writes, "As I stand there, I find myself thinking that somewhere down the line, both guilt and empathy speak to our own buried sense that an order of some sort is required. not the social order that exists necessarily, but something more fundamental and more demanding. A sense further that one has a stake in this order. A wish that no matter how fluid this order sometimes appears, it will not drain out of the universe.